The reason why I wanted to make this podcast in the first place is because of the simple fact that there's women that go around nowadays that do not even know the difference. I've asked plenty of women the question of, "Hey, do you know what femininity is?" Right? And surprisingly, women don't know what it is. They are not educated on what it actually is. And I find that absolutely fascinating because that is most of their nature. That is most of your nature. So if you can just recognize that, where I ask women, hey, what is femininity? I'm not asking girls, I'm asking women. I ask women this, and they question what's the difference, right? Like, just as this one person in the gym that I talked to today, and I told her that I'm going to be doing a podcast on feminism versus femininity, and she's like, oh, I don't even know the difference. I'm like, that's why I'm making the podcast. And like I said, I've had this conversation plenty of times with women where they can't even define what femininity is, right? And I do think that is a fundamental problem within society because it is so important of what creates a healthy and strong foundation for society. Okay. So that is the reason why I wanted to make this podcast, right? And I wanted to voice some of my opinions on, like I said, some of these topics that I see or some of these observations that I have within society, right? So, like I said, it's all going to get covered on this podcast. So, like I said, if you're in here, make sure to leave a comment just like I see you in here. But we're going to go ahead and get it rocking, all right? So, feminism, right? What is feminism? Feminism is, or also known as the feminist movement, is basically women's empowerment. It's like a women's movement where they refer to the. I'm reading this off of something I read. Um, it is the series of social movements and political campaigns for the radical and liberal reforms on women's issues created by inequalities between men and women. All right. So with that being said, that is a whole lot to take in, but it is basically an absolutely necessary thing within society. Absolutely necessary. Initially for sure, it was definitely necessary because obviously women were not where they should have been, and now they are where they should be, realistically speaking. So which is great, which is great. Like I said, round of applause, right? That's something that was obviously needed within society. So that's great. But what I will say though is the same movement that was, let's just say, it founded in 1984 or no 1984, 18 I think 1848 if I'm not mistaken. That's one of the first movements has happened. So with that being said, there's been plenty of other movements, not movements, but waves of feminism, right? So I'm not too well versed on it, but I'm just gonna give you my point of view, more specifically on modern day feminism, because that is, like I had mentioned, something that is completely different than what it usually was, what it was meant to be, versus what it is right now. I do think that the people who started the feminist movement would look down upon, truly look down upon, some of the ways in which some of the feminist movement acts nowadays. And I say that because, do I think it's gone too far? Me personally, I do think it's gone too far. It's gone too far because, for many different reasons, which I'll get into right now. So, through my perception, this is what I see, and maybe I have a misconstrued perception of it, and like I said, I could be completely wrong, right? But I'm just gonna give you my lens because, like I said, this is Life of Champ podcast. I want to give you my opinion on it, right? So, the past, like I said, is absolutely necessary. The evolution of feminism, in my opinion, is to make women more masculine. It is a pursuit of masculine endeavors, right? That's what I personally see, right? And if you know anything about women in their nature, it's not exactly ideal because now there is some things that are necessary, like I said, equality within the workplace and things like that. I believe in that for sure. Of course, I couldn't imagine a world where it was any different or that it should be any different, right? With that being said, I do believe that there's certain things that, like I said, have just went way too far, and one of them is pushing the women out of the house and into the workforce. Right? That was now, like I said, it was necessary to an extent. Right? It was necessary to an extent, but now you look at the way society is right now. There's rarely any stay-at-home moms. Right? And that is very interesting because you see the impact that it has on society, and it actually indeed does have an impact. And if you don't recognize that, then I would say you're just not looking, quite frankly. Um, but with that being said, if you have the women out of the house who's going to raise the children? Because obviously the man's working. Most men work. There's very, very few stay-at-home dads, right? If you're watching this and you're a stay-at-home dad, all right, that's cool, I guess. But they don't exist. They don't exist in abundance. Let's just say that, okay? But like I said, I personally don't see too many stay-at-home wives anymore, and I do believe that, like I said, has is a very, very crazy impact within society. Because like I said, or like I did mention actually, there's going to be a difference in how your children is raised. They're going to be raised differently, right? Who are they raised by? You ask the question, right? If they're not raised by, well, of course they're going to be raised by the parents. But if the parents are at work, who is truly raising the children? Hmm. Society is raising children, right? And now, if you look at society, do you think society actually has your children's best interest in mind? Hmm. I would say no. Not all the way. Of course, there's some things that are great within the propaganda that they push out to our children, but at the same time, do you truly believe that they have all the best intentions for your children? And I would say no. There's a lot of conflict that comes in the household because let's just say your child has overheard a conversation that maybe they probably uh, shouldn't have heard, or maybe a conversation that you didn't want them to hear, right? And with that being said, it just kind of shows that lens of society raising the children instead of the parents being the main thing, right? You can say that they're the main thing even if they work, but truly, um, you can only be so influential when you're at work for an extended period of time, right? You can try your best. I'm not saying that men or women that work jobs. I'm not saying that they're any less of a parent than a person who would could actually care for that person, care for that child a little bit more. But it's just gonna be a different way of being raised, right? And I don't think it's as optimal to have your child be raised by society. It's not as optimal as it could be, where let's just say the woman in the household is able to do what she needs to do in the household and raise the children, right? Like I said, I'm not saying it's not necessary, right? I'm saying it applies differently to every single situation, but in an ideal world, that's how I would like it to be, because I do believe that it would be most beneficial that way, me personally. But another thing that I want to mention, and I overheard this from a few clips and things like that. Also, the person that's in the thumbnail, absolutely fantastic. Um, but yeah, would say that. She mentioned how she's seen how feminism was going, and she recognized that it's truly a war on masculinity, right? Because you're telling women to pursue, like I had mentioned, be on the pursuit of masculine endeavors, be more like men, to the point where women tried so hard to be equal to men that they forgot how to be women. Hmm. Let that sink in. I'm gonna say that one more time. Women tried so hard to be equal to men that they forgot how to be women. Right? With this feminism movement that has came, right? Women are more and more out of touch of they're out of touch with their true femininity, which, like I had mentioned, man, if you're out of touch with that, wow. Like society's you're going to see the little things in society that could be better if you know if it wasn't such a masculine endeavor. Honestly, I would say feminism right now, it is more of a masculine endeavor than it ever has been, right? And like I said, it's completely a changed so much, so much. Appreciate it on Twitch. Appreciate it, I guess. All right, we're gonna keep rocking, man. But yeah, I'm gonna say that one more time for you guys. This is very, very important, right? Women tried so hard to be equal to men that they forgot how to be women. We no longer embrace the obvious differences within men and women, right? And a person who embraces those can be labeled a lot of different things, right? To embrace femininity or to embrace masculinity, you're automatically put in this box. You're automatically labeled a certain thing, instead of a person who recognizes that it's optimal for society. Now, like I said, fellas, if you remove femininity, which I'll get into what femininity truly is, right? If you remove femininity from the society, you have too much masculine energy, right? The women are masculine, the men are masculine. Who who's taking care of the people that need to be taken care of? Truly, Now you might financially be taken care of, but I'm talking about like what's actually needed, the nurturing care that is needed with femininity. The second part to this podcast is going to be femininity, right? And with that being said, there's going to be certain things that I recognize, like just this for example, I mentioned it earlier in the podcast, right? I recognize that people don't even know the difference between the feminism and femininity. So that's like I said, that's why I wanted to make this podcast. So femininity, if I could describe it to you, right, is the caring, supportive, empathetic, very positive, very intuitive, sensitive, cooperative, and complementary to the masculine, right? So it is one part of a whole, the whole being masculine and feminine, right? Femininity is one aspect of this. If you remove these certain qualities from society, your society is going to be lacking. And that's exactly what I observe right now. I do not see enough feminine women nowadays, right? I see these women trying to act a certain way that leads to a life eventually where it's not going to give you fulfillment, right? There's certain things, there's certain phrases that are used that are not feminine phrases that are, like I said, are not conducive to a healthy society, whether you like to admit it or not. But yeah, just that description of femininity should give you, hopefully, a better idea of what that looks like, right? And one thing I want to mention with mentioning femininity is most men, I'm speaking in general terms, right? Most men are going to prefer women who are feminine, right? And I would say right now, my observation is most women in society right now are not feminine. They do not know how to embrace their feminine nature. They truly do not. Or they're unaware of them even actually consciously choosing to do that, right? There's women that get looked down upon for being stay-at-home moms, for embracing femininity, for wanting to raise their own children. They're looked down upon by certain individuals. And here's the thing: if you have a problem with that, I do not know what to tell you. Like, it is what it is, right? And another thing I want to mention within this, talking about femininity, which I mentioned on a previous podcast as well, talking about the masculine and feminine dynamic, right? Is that society right now has an absolutely weak view of the way being feminine is right now, right? If you're a woman and you're feminine, right? A lot of women look at you like you're a pick me type of girl, right? They do not look at you in the highest light if you portray a feminine nature, right? And of course, there's certain situations where some people actually embrace this, right? And like I said, that I give a round of applause to those, right? But I would say for the most part, society is not embracing true feminine nature anymore. Like I said, it has a weak look, which I truly do not understand it, but that's just something that I observe. Yeah, and I would say, like I said, the feminist movement is going to contribute to not promoting femininity, right? Who's really promoting femininity right now? Do you guys personally know anybody that's promoting femininity besides me? If that's a no, then fellas, we have a problem. We have a problem. We have a fundamental problem in society. It is one thing. It's one part to a whole, right? And if there's going to be a lacking aspect, like society's going to lack in itself, right?